Hello, dear sir. I mean, master.
I'm not your master.
Welcome to today's video. I'm reviewing Mouse P.I for hire. If you want the too long didn't read version, you can skip towards the end and hear a quicker wrap up of my final thoughts. Mouse P.I for hire is an FPS game released in 2026 by Fumi Games and published by Playside Studios. They describe their game as a first-person shooter that draws inspiration from classic cartoons of the 1930s. Its black and white rubber hose visuals are drawn by hand, frame by frame, has a noir-filled detective story, lively environments, and an original big band jazz soundtrack, and an arsenal of cartoon weapons and devastating power-ups. For reference, I'm performing my review on a standard PS5, so I can only speak about my experience with the game on that platform. So if you intend to use mouse and keyboard or play on a different platform, take my review with a grain of salt. For the sake of brevity, I'll refer to the game as Mouse from here on out. When I first saw the trailer for Mouse online around 2023, 2024, or whenever it was, I was immediately drawn to the aesthetic of this game. Let's be honest, I doubt I'm alone in my initial reaction being its old school Mickey Mouse with guns. It's not the first game to go for this aesthetic, as we did have Cuphead offer up amazing visuals in that same 1930s rubber hose style. However, what really cemented how unique Mouse is was having that aesthetic overlaid on an FPS game, giving us the speed, gunplay, and violence of boomer shooters and marrying that with the wacky, charming cartoon visuals your great-grandpa was watching after work at 7 years old when there was only one channel. We play as private investigator Jack Pepper. What should have been a normal job turns into the first piece of a larger puzzle which slowly unravels a bigger conspiracy. The story definitely has all the beats of a noir story. We've got a larger conspiracy at play, corrupt public officials and public servants, damsels in distress, friends that might be foes, and so on. I don't really expect most people will be playing this for the story. I definitely did not. To be honest, I sometimes lost track of what was happening and when. I was more keen on the action and interacting with different characters along the way. I do appreciate the effort that has gone into the story and the fact that it isn't a half-baked plot that's really an excuse to move you between levels of the game. So the fact that there's a story to follow along with is a plus for me. The lore of the world itself relates to the story, but I want to explore that separately a bit later in the video. The main reason I wanted to play Mouse was the visual aspect of it. There is plenty to discuss regarding Mouse's visuals, but I would like to start with the environments and levels as we make our way through those different elements. When you think about it, it would be a challenge to set an FPS game in a 3D environment where the main feature of the world's visual sensibilities is it being 2D, and yet this challenge has been well met. The way the environments and levels are designed and presented do not cause a dissonance between moving through space and seeing 2D characters everywhere. Seeing solid 3D objects and then 2D cartoon characters around don't feel out of place from a first-person point of view, but funnily feel rather natural when you're playing Mouse. I'm no color or design or lighting expert, but it feels like the way the environments are colored or shaded along with the lighting and the way the first-person perspective has been set gives consistency to the way the world is presented and it making sense, which points to a lot of care and thought being put into how this game looks and feels. It's great that the devs didn't just think to really lean on just the character visuals, but really looked at the visuals holistically. A welcome feature with Mouse is the option to alter how much of a vintage and grainy feel you want with the visuals. No doubt some people like me will prefer to have the game look as grainy as possible to have that vintage vibe and ruin what little we have left of our vision. Others no doubt will want sharper visuals for clearer sight, especially since this is an FPS game. I appreciate we have this option instead of the visual effect being static. You'll find yourself traveling to theaters, apartments, movie sets, mansions, warehouses, shanty towns, usual settings we'd expect for any noir story, and the way you get there is through the overworld. Now the overworld connects all the different levels to each other. You will use a card to navigate the overworld, and as you progress through the story, you'll complete investigations to unlock more buildings and levels. The overworld has a lot of charm to it. I was hoping we would maybe get to use like a boat or plane to navigate through parts of it as we progress through the game, but we just have the car throughout. There's just so much charm in it that I was hoping for there to be a bit more to it, but I don't know if that's valid to hold against the game. Going from the visual element of the environments, I also wanted to highlight the visual aspect of characters in Mouse, whether it be the friendly NPCs you speak to often, enemies you'll be shooting, or even the guns you use. Characters have plenty of charm and variety in their design. There are also plenty of characters we only meet once that are very memorable, not entirely due to the visual aspect, but the voice acting as well, which we'll get into later. Sometimes I'll find myself just watching NPCs move around out of curiosity and amusement. Just watching how these 2D figures occupy a 3D space is really interesting. interesting. With enemies, I really like how they're animated when they're defeated. I found myself trying different weapons and environmental kills just to see the different animations. One thing that always cracks me up is setting enemies on fire and they end up as a pile of ash with big eyes. Not all the death animations are completely cutesy, with it being possible to full on shoot an enemy's head off. Nice touch is also seeing ink spraying around instead of blood. The team have done a good job of having the gore we would expect but keeping it true to the aesthetic sensibilities of Mouse. Sticking within those sensibilities are also the guns and weapons themselves, right down to the heads up display. Guns have their own idling animations and react differently from each other when they're shot and reloaded. Each gun also has its own individual icon on the bottom right that reacts according to what you're doing. You can see the difference it makes if you go to the Mouse game channel here on YouTube and actually look at the first video uploaded. Notice the absolute difference between giving the gun personality compared to it just being a normal gun. All in all, I think visually the game has done well delivering on the hype its aesthetics received and keeping things consistent and immersive throughout. That being said, there were two things visually that were a bit of an issue for me. Early on in the game, at some parts where enemies rush you to attack you in close quarters, moving laterally sometimes messed up my judgment of how far away they are, if that makes sense. I'd say this one was minor, as the more I sunk time into Mouse, I got used to this and worked around this tiny issue. The second one for me are warning indicators. Whenever you have enemies out of sight, you'll get warning indicators showing where they are in relation to where you're facing. Found since the game is in black and white, the indicators don't stand out so much, meaning you might have a delayed reaction. The game might do well to include an option that maybe warnings or hit indicators would be in a color of your choice. Coming back to the levels and environments from a design and functional perspective, I did enjoy them and found them to be well designed for what I think they are trying to be. Levels are made to be explored and traversed Metroidvania style according to the game's site, which we will touch on later. Levels aren't just solely made for you to go through and blast everything. It will often reward those that take the time to explore a bit and are keen to solve puzzles. There are secrets and unlockables to be found throughout levels, and these are all optional. The types of things you'll find are stashes of cash or coins, which you can use to purchase ammunition, or extras like baseball cards for a minigame, or comic strips, which you can read and collect. Finding these won't really affect the main story. You can also find blueprints that can be exchanged to upgrade your weapons, and finding more of these means you can upgrade your main weapons quicker or upgrade more of your weapons to be above base level. The upgrades feel most impactful when they are damage increases or ammo capacity increases. You can get other upgrades like alternate shooting modes like a cluster shot or a charged shot. To be honest, playing on normal difficulty, your primary shot is all good for most situations. There are also unlockables that I got nowhere near completing, like tokens for this machine here in the bar, or these little figures that remind you of the Pip-Boy figures in Fallout. No idea what those do, but I'm not really a 100% completionist type of gamer. Some levels will also have puzzles. There may be a few here and there that might require a guide to get a quick solution if you're impatient. Looking to find all collectibles and secrets can extend your total playtime by about 2 or more hours, give or take. Some of these secrets and extras will be hidden inside safes that you must lockpick, and I really enjoyed this gameplay mechanic. It's really simple, but also not so simple that you can kind of go autopilot on it. I think most games have the lockpicking we're familiar with from Skyrim, where you've got to rotate something and get the zone correct or make sure things line up. In Mouse, you're using your tail, but your tail and movement are limited, so you kind of had to plan ahead of where to move. Some safes will be locked permanently if you do mess up the lockpick attempt, so if you're someone that wants to get 100% on your first playthrough, make good use of those save points. Otherwise, this may add some replay value for you. The levels aren't overly complicated or so massive that you need a map to find your way around. They are fairly linear, so most times it'll be intuitive on where to go next. The only time you're really going to go off the set path is if you've got to go between places in a level to grab an item or access a new area. Again, fairly simple stuff. If I had to compare it to something, I'd say it's probably similar to simple dungeons in Skyrim, with how long it can take to explore a level to completion or near it, and how linear the levels are. I spent most of the game favoring 2 guns for almost all situations, the boomstick and James gun. Keeping in mind I was playing on normal difficulty, I didn't really need to swap weapons much or really alter how I played. The only time I really swapped weapons is just out of curiosity. The weapons felt good to use, they had weight and appropriate feedback to them, so despite the aesthetics they felt like they had a bit of grunt. Before we continue on with weapons, I do need to mention the power-ups. You can get power-ups throughout the game that let you do cool things like shoot enemies with finger guns, or my favorite being the friggin' spinach can for Popeye arms. I absolutely loved punching enemies in the face. My only problem with these power-ups are they are only available at certain moments in the game. I really wish they were upgrades themselves you could earn, or were like a meter you could unlock, and after defeating a certain number of enemies you could activate the spinach to go Popeye mode, or similar to other abilities in the game, be something you unlock after interacting with a certain character. Coming back to weapons, there's a missed opportunity here for Mouse to encourage players to use different weapons out of necessity. For example, it would have been great if you did need to switch more of your guns on the fly in order to defeat different enemy types, and instead it felt more like any enemy can be defeated reasonably with most weapons, which again I won't hold against the game too much as I don't think that's what it was aiming for. I also would have liked if mouse supported switching between multiple weapons fluidly. You can only hold triangle to pick weapons, and then tapping triangle would cycle the last two weapons you selected. There was also no dedicated throwable button, so if you wanted to throw something quickly but was not one of your last two choices, you'd have to bring up your weapon wheel. This partly influenced me in not changing my weapon so I can cycle between the two that will get the job done. Also, constantly pausing to bring up the weapon wheel sort of kills the flow of combat. Some weapons are introduced a bit later in the game and it feels like they appear maybe a bit too late. Not to spoil anything, but there is one gun you get later on, and the way it interacts with flying enemies is really interesting. It opens up some different offensive options. However, by the time I got the weapon, it felt a little late. I estimate I'm probably through like 75% or 80% of the story by that point. Moving on to level traversal, you will unlock travel abilities. These help you move through levels in unique ways that uncover paths that lead to secrets or unlockables. You can also use these abilities during combat to evade enemies or open up offensive options. There are only a few levels that will really encourage you to use all of the abilities, as some of them are contextual, requiring a particular hook or a type of wall to be around to execute the ability. Again, it feels there was potential here to encourage more experimentation and creativity. Chaining these movements together, coupled with quick switching of weapons, would have really elevated the gameplay for me. There are platforming sections throughout the game, but these are very minimal. Some of them are scripted sections where you're required to use the traversal abilities in quick succession. All of them are easy enough, and there's so few that even failing and repeating them are annoying at most and a slight inconvenience at the very least. I also did mention the lore previously, and I wanted to single that out. For me, I really like the lore and world building of Mouse. It's something referenced a lot by characters, the old world and what seems to have been a war of some sort. Different characters speak of this event from different perspectives. For some it sounds like it was a terrible time, and for others it sounds like maybe it was the highlight of their lives. Added to this are the insights we get into the society of Mouse and how differently rodents are treated. The bartender will give passionate speeches about the discrimination his kind face.
Just how it is. Always has been. And until rodents like me can take a bus without getting face planted in a rose bed simply for being short, it ain't over.
And it's these bits of lore and world building I really enjoy, and turns the world of Mouse from being something flat into something that feels like, could really exist. The voice acting in this game is absolutely amazing. Great performances in general from all of the cast. Everyone sounds appropriate for what we would expect from a noir-fueled story. Not everyone has the same accent, and it's nice to hear a variety in those accents and even mannerisms in speech.
As much as I enjoy blasting, no, not today. I need info on a Betty Lynch.
Betty? Yeah, I knew her all right.
Oh, look who's back. Where'd you run off to yesterday?
Something like that. But this one disappeared mid-show, right in front of a handful of surprised mice.
So, Monsieur Pepe, have you found out anything about my poor late friend?
You already got plenty of charm. Why bury it under that, accent?
I admitted earlier that I didn't follow the story sometimes throughout the game, but what I never got sick of was hearing the voice actors. I did also really enjoy the work of Frank Tadari, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing that, who voices Cornelius Stilton. I really liked this character, got a bit of a stutter going on, and a big shout out to the writers as well for the dialogue too. This character is a bit of a crafty guy and kind of comes off as a bit dodgy, but there's not really anything to incriminate him, Always seems to have some sort of excuse as to why he's in near proximity to suspects in your case, but it always kind of checks out. So very amusing.
And the bastards behind it. Did they finally get a slap from the hired arm of justice? Jack! You there, buddy?
Coming back to what I had mentioned about some side characters only appearing once throughout the game, some of these characters were really memorable. Just their mannerisms and or dialogue can be humorous. Part of that is in the voice acting too, like these guys.
I'm Igor.
Igor, not Igor?
No, Igor.
Hey, I'm,
Oh no, the police?
Oh, no. I'm a private dick.
Well, we had a rehearsal. Francesco was high on the wire. He's a funambulist, see?
Although the voice acting is great, the moments where characters having extended dialogue does feel dull at times, not due to the voice acting but due to the static animations of the characters. The voice acting feels so vibrant, but seeing the same idle animations just threw me off a little bit. I can see these forced subtitles there that appear to sort of try and break up this monotony, but it only goes so far. As for the sound of the game, to be honest, I didn't pay so much attention. The music is appropriate for what you would expect and it varies as necessary, getting intense when it's time for combat and mellowing out when it's more exploration, etc. The sounds you expect to hear from explosions and gunshots are fine, nothing felt out of place.
Here to the wetlands or anywhere, really, anywhere but here.
You! Hands up! I'm firing a warning shot now!
Funny. Look like a cop, talk like a cop, but wasn't really a cop. What the hell is going on here?
It's great that there's an option to toggle licensed music off for those looking to stream or create content. Unfortunately for me, I didn't see that option, but apparently they also got a big band together with original tracks for the game, so yeah, I'm really impressed by that effort. So now we come to the too long didn't read portion of the video where we ask two important questions. Basically, is it worth the price and what are we going to rate the game? Mouse P.I for hire is like 20 something USD. In New Zealand, that's about $56 when I bought a digital copy on the PS Store. It's a hefty price considering $56 could get you a decent meal on a night out and some drinks. The game will give you about 20 hours or so of gameplay, potentially longer if you're looking to do 100%. And yeah, to be honest, I feel like I got my money's worth out of this game. I don't feel like I regret dropping that money on Mouse. I feel like it gave me what I expected, so I think it's fair for what it is. Finally, what would I actually rate the game? I would give Mouse P.I for hire a solid 7.5. It's scratching into that territory of being a must play, but I feel there were just some areas lacking that held it back from reaching that zone. To get into an 8 range, I think a game has to give me an experience I would recommend to everyone regardless of their tastes, and it's not quite there for me. This is a good game though, don't get me wrong, and a good first showing for a new IP. I do hope Fumi Games run it back for round 2 and give us either a sequel or a successor to this. Apparently DLC is coming, so I definitely will keep that on my radar. While there were some things I felt held the gameplay, presentation or experience back, there were also some very good ideas here. I think this is a great foundation for a sequel, and I would be happy to bet that the game that comes after this from Fumi Games would be a must play, judging from what I've seen here. If you've played Mouse P.I for hire, please let me know what your thoughts are and if you agreed or disagreed with my takes. Thank you. Take care. Off out.